Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Leadership. Today I'm speaking with Jeremy Streten. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Look, thank you for the pre-prep discussion. It's helped me to orient my thinking around some of the questions I need to ask. But before we get stuck into things, just for the sake of those that are listening and viewing this, sorry, I'm trying to get out of the mode of the audio podcasting. So for everyone, whether you're listening to this or watching me live, just a bit of background on Jeremy. So you wear multiple hats, mate. You're an entrepreneur. You're someone who's working in the legal profession, and I know it's not quite 20 on the bio, but you've multiple decades in the legal game, and you're an author and you've written the Business Legal Lifecycle. So before we get into how you got into your leadership pathway, give me a bit of a background on you before we get started with the questions proper, if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. I started law almost 20 years ago. I started my law degree 20 years ago.
We'll say 20 plus years. We'll go with that.
Yeah. And I worked for a Brisbane-based law firm for a number of years, and really decided that I could do it better. The old story. I was working with someone else, and I knew that I could run a better business. So about a decade ago, I started my own law firm, and that's been a really big journey for me because if you'd asked me 10 years ago whether I'd be a lawyer for the rest of my life, the answer would have been yes. Like I love the law. I love helping people. I love doing what I was doing. And that was my goal, was to start a business with my business partner. And we still own that law firm. And then to say that I'm going in writing books and advising people, and I do a bit of business coaching, as we were talking about before, really, I would have thought that was crazy because I thought I'd be a lawyer forever, but I really grew to understand how business operates and how we could do things better. So yeah, it's been a great journey. I've written a number of books, as we talked about before. The Business Legal Lifecycle was the first, and is really my passion around helping business owners to really understand the law and make legal advice accessible for business owners.
Yeah, there's a level of envy when I have podcast guests that are high achievers and have written multiple books when I am, I'll never get anywhere near writing a book. So yeah, it's amazing that the people who can have a career and write multiple books at the same time. Where you find the time, I don't know.
Well, Eric, what I'd say on that is never say never, because when I started with the business coach that I still have now, one of the first things he said to me was, "You will write a book one day." And I laughed at him and I said, "What lawyer writes a book for business owners? That's a boring textbook." And about 4 or 5 years later, I had to ring him and eat humble pie and tell him that that I'd come up with this concept of the life cycle, and I had a book and I had 13 phases and 13 chapters, and I was like, and then I had to admit to him that I wrote it. So never say never.
Yeah, okay. It's one of those things in far off future, if I would ever get to it. But what am I looking for here? What I'm trying to say is that it can be inspiring to see someone that passionate about what they do get to the point where they want to write a book. And so I just wanted to ask you, because in the intro, and I could have asked this in the questions, but I'll do it now before we get into the weeds of the questions, is more, there seems to be maybe a grey line between a lawyer and an entrepreneur, in that when you go out and hang your own shingle up anyway and you're providing legal advice, you could see that as an entrepreneurial venture, although technically you're not an entrepreneur in that sense. But it seems that those two things are connected, and you've gone down that pathway. Do you know of others that have made the leap from being in love with the law and wanting to be in the legal profession to working in their own businesses in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. He talks about the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. And most professionals, they start their business being a great technician, and they have no idea about what management or entrepreneurship actually is. So sure. I know lots of other lawyers. I used to work for a couple that were really stepping away from being lawyers and were being more the entrepreneur and starting other businesses. So I think it's a very common path. I think that for what I see, especially in the professions and the people that I talk to, is there's a couple of different people's mindsets. Some people love being lawyers, and I know one lawyer that comes to mind, who's a good mate of mine. He's been a lawyer, a family lawyer, for 40 plus years, and he loves it. He absolutely loves what he does every day. He has no desire to build a team, no desire. He does run his own business, but he's got no desire to do anything else That's what he
Sure.
loves to do. And that's perfectly fine. And that's his mindset. But there's others who do have a more entrepreneurial mindset, who figure that, there's got to be something more. And I don't know, I've thought about this a lot, and I think it comes down to a bit like, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours to master something. And I feel that once you get to that 10,000 hours, it kind of gets a bit boring. Like, you feel like, I got to a point where I felt like I've kind of done everything I can do. I've achieved everything that I can achieve. And so, why keep on doing that? Let's get another challenge. So I think there's a combination of factors in there, but it's something to really answer your question. It's really something that I've seen a lot of, that a lot of lawyers, a lot of professionals kind of get bored with that day-to-day technician work and want to do something more to keep, to really, I guess, keep interested in what they're doing.
Kind of makes sense when you're saying that, at the start of this conversation, 20 odd years, maybe plus in one profession, that, if by that amount of time you haven't really done all you could possibly do, then stay on and keep at it. And obviously that colleague of yours that is still doing the family law, that if that's what passionately drives them, then they will have work until the day that they want to retire. So horses for courses, I can understand that. So Jeremy, okay, let's get into the question. So you've hinted at your leadership pathway and kind of how you got to where you got to, but let's flesh that out a little bit. And I'll ask this question a slightly different way, if you'll allow me an indulgence as the host here. And I know that's cool. So let's go with this. You've teased out in some ways why you made the jump. Was it a specific event that said to you, right, I think I've got to go? Or was it a series of things that sort of helped to bring the puzzle together that said, I've got to do something related but slightly different to what I'm doing now? Was there that aha moment for you or not?
I think there's probably two. If I look back on my life over the last decade in particular, there's probably two moments. And the first was when I decided to start my own law firm. And that was really just born out of frustration, and really born out of frustration that I knew I could become a partner at the firm I was at, but I didn't want to be. I didn't, I really liked the founding partners, but the other people that they brought into the business weren't people that I liked, and that I didn't get along with, to be really honest. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being partnered with people that I didn't like. So, I made that decision to start my own law firm with my business partner, who we did work together at the time as well. And we both left at the same time, which was a great conversation to have. But it was really around I in my mind, I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to have more control over my life, but I knew that I didn't want to be partnered with certain people that were that were on their way to being partners of that law firm. So the alternative is be unhappy or go and do my own thing. And so I never liked doing stuff that makes me unhappy. So I decided to go and do my own thing with my business partner. And the other one was, when I made that shift, and again, looking back, with hindsight, with 2020 vision, is great. At the time, I had no idea that I was doing this. There were two cases that I acted for different clients with in my own law firm. That one guy lost over $1 million of other people's money, and another guy lost nearly $2 million of his own property because they didn't understand the legal risks of what they were doing. They didn't take proactive legal steps to prevent to prevent problems from occurring. And what ended up happening was we would try and save them. The gentleman who almost lost $2 million of his own property, we managed to save him. The other people who were in a business partnership lost $1 million of other people's money, all because they didn't get legal advice. And when you sat down with them and said, why not? They said, because legal advice is expensive. I don't like talking to lawyers. They're difficult to deal with. They lorded over me. They use big words, and we just thought we could do it ourselves. And it really struck me that I know there's a better way, and there's this better way of being proactive and actually helping people. So, after that shift, and for me, it was really around that. It was these two matters where I was like, there must be a better way. We can't just keep on, as a profession, helping people solve their problems that costs them so much money that they could prevent in the past. So it really triggered in my brain. And that, I said before, I had to admit that I had a book after 4 years of saying I would never write one. And I really sat down and mapped out this life cycle. So the business legal life cycle, which is 13 phases of what you should do and when you should do it in a business from a legal point of view in particular. And I worked out, here's a way. I went through all the businesses that did things well and all the ones that did things badly and mapped out what are the steps that they need to take. And it was really those two matters where I just knew there had to be a better way. And so it was really an inflection. At the time, I had no idea that's the journey I was going on. But looking back at it now, 5-6 years later, I can really see that was a pivotal moment for me.
So many questions. We don't have all day on this, but I'll go with one that really stands out for me. That it'll be a statement first, and I guess a question to follow. That it seems you took a considered, what would you call it, a values-based stand about what could be done better, and you made your call after that, and that takes guts to do that kind of stuff. And I don't think everyone gets the luxury, and it is a luxury to find a moment where you go, wow, this is a tipping point, or this is what needs to change at some point in time. Maybe COVID has brought that up in some senses, but I'm not going to touch COVID for this conversation other than for that reference. So I've just broken my own rule, but that's okay. To me, this sounds a lot like a defining leadership moment. So let's segue, if we can, into that question then. How do you define leadership, Jeremy?
That's a great question, Eric. And for me, it's around having a vision and really knowing what your vision is, where you're going, and then really thinking through, okay, how am I going to get there? And from a leadership point of view, it's who's going to help me get there. This is a lesson that I had to really learn for myself. As a lawyer, I've said before, you're a great technician. You're a great technician doing the work every day. And you're the who. People come to you to do the work. And leadership is a very different beast. You've got to lead other people. And so for me, it's around, okay, I know my vision. I have a very big goal of making legal advice accessible to all SMEs around the world. That's my goal. And I know that I can't do that myself, right? That would do my head in. I need to partner with other lawyers. I need a team to help me do that. So it's around knowing that vision and then keeping the boat rowing in that direction and always thinking, will it make the boat go faster, whatever decision that I make? So for me, it's around knowing my vision and then making sure that the decisions I make are helping to achieve that goal, but then also bringing my team along with me and who is the right person to actually achieve those goals. That's how I see leadership.
Geez, it's not a small goal there to change that on a global scale. At least you know what the goal is. All right. So in that vein and taking people with you, and couldn't disagree with anything you've just said. Making decisions in that context. Now I'm taking you out of the legal one-on-one stuff to working with other people. I think you know where I'm going with this. I've used the phrase, and I didn't coin the phrase, nor am I taking credit for the phrase, the lonely road of leadership. Do you believe it is a lonely pathway, or is it as lonely as you make it?
I think it's as lonely as you make it, because I think both statements are true. I think leadership and being a business owner is a lonely pathway, but there are things that you can do to change that. Even having a business partner, there are times when I feel lonely. Right, because there are certain discussions that we can or we probably should have, but we don't have, and even when you make those discussions, it's quite lonely getting to that discussion. So I think that it definitely is a lonely path, but there is so much these days that you can do to actually fix that and actually do that. One of the things that I do is I run masterminds. We haven't really talked about this before, but I run online masterminds where we actually bring business owners together. And one of the big points that we make around this is actually it's coming together with a group of no more than 10 business owners to understand what each other's got going through in their business and to really do and to really know what you're missing in your business. So for me, it is lonely, but you can choose whether or not you're lonely or not. We've all got choices. Everything's a choice in life, even if we think it's not. And so you can choose to surround yourself with people that will give you that great advice. And also, I have a fabulous 2IC in my businesses. She and I get on really well, and she's fabulous at calling me out on stuff, and so that makes it better too. So I think it is a choice, and it's something that people can get around very easily if they are willing to put themselves out there.
Without naming your 2IC, did you actively look for someone who was going to be a naysayer when you needed that, so someone to call you out, or did that develop over time? And why I ask this question is, and I know that everyone will approach this in a slightly different way, but I get the sense that some people and some leaders that I've met, who will of course remain nameless, that have never participated in my podcast, so you'll never know who I'm talking about. But getting that kind of feedback, it was just never in their DNA that they were to be unquestioned in what they did. And we've all met those people. You seem to be okay to be called out on your BS when you need to be. Did you actively look for that, or was that something that developed over time?
It's definitely something that developed over time. So she worked in the law firm as a paralegal for a long time, and then graduated to be office manager. And then after that, with what I was doing, she liked what I was doing, so I came in, but I had to cultivate that relationship. It's definitely a strength of hers, but it's something that she didn't know that she could do, and that she didn't feel comfortable doing early on either. So I had to create that safe space and to allow that to happen, and also to ask for it as well, like genuinely to say, if you disagree with me, I want you to tell me. That's part of, in her job description that we wrote up when she was starting to become business manager with me on the various things that I do. That was one of the conditions, was you need to call me out on it, and that takes time. And so you got to be comfortable with that. And Eric, I wasn't always comfortable with that approach either, right?
at least you're honest. Look, I'm amazed that you could put that in a PD. And for me, at my point in my career, and I think you're there as well, that you look at advice and feedback and criticism of whatever kind, and as long as it's delivered constructively, like I think I react better when someone says, look, can we go through point by point, and these are just some suggestions, rather than, hey, this is shit, don't like it, and here's my critique. I think it's all in the delivery. I think as you progress and get more experience, I'm not necessarily talking age here, because you can get younger people that get experience very quickly and are very very good at what they do, that as you mature into roles, your capacity to take that on is seen as an asset for you, because it helps you to be a better practitioner in whatever field you're at. And so good to hear that you got there. I know when I was younger that I would never have this conversation with anyone about telling the boss what was what, but now I get to practice that a lot with the board that I work with, not in a disrespectful way, but if I think that they're potentially stepping on a landmine, I will call that out. And then at least I know I've done everything I could to brief the people I need to brief. And then at the end of the day, they're adults, they're business people, they have their own way of thinking. I've at least given them the tools to go forward. So yeah, it's interesting that you say that, and being comfortable to take that. Yeah, it sounds like it took you, it was a progression to get to that point. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And
okay.
I think the seminal thing that someone said, actually, David Dugan, who's my business coach and runs a business coaching outfit that I work with, he said to me when I had children, he said, you get what you project. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, you're right. And I see that with my children. But that's the same as with your team. It's the same with every relationship you have, right? You get what you project. And if you allow people to, well, if you don't create a safe space for people to be able to challenge you, then they're not going to challenge you. And so part of being a leader is around recognizing you get what you project. And if someone gives you feedback and then you're aggressive or you're closed-minded or whatever, you really I guess you take out of that emotional bank account that people talk about, and that person's never going to challenge you again. So it's around being open and honest about it. And I'm just lucky that we've built our friendship as well, where that she feels completely safe to challenge me on that. So that works well.
Brilliant quote. You get what you, quite some wise words there. Obviously, the gentleman you mentioned, sorry, what was his name again?
David.
David has been there and done that with kids. I've got 18-year-old who's finished high school and a 15-year-old, and yeah, there's nothing like them making you feel your years as they're progressing through life. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, mate. Look, we've gotten to a good point in the discussion, and I often ask this next theme. I didn't know whether to ask it because I think we can go elsewhere with some of the questions, but measuring success. Now, I often ask this because I'm not looking for the, my KPI for success is this many people through the door or this many wins, and hopefully you have more wins than losses as a legal person, but that is what it is. It's left to the gods in some senses. Measure of success. And I'll ask this in a slightly different way because I'm intrigued where you might go with the response. Do you think your measures of success when you first started as a professional have changed over time? And if they have, on what basis do you think that change happened?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well,
all right. Well, that ends the podcast. No, all right. No, go on.
That's the podcast nightmare, right? Where someone gives a one-word answer.
Yeah.
So for me, it comes back to, and I said it before, around having a goal. So I always have a goal. I have a very large goal with this business. I also have other goals for other things, but it's around having a goal of where I want to go. And I only learned this, after I started my own business, right? We just, as I said before, we were just going to have a law firm that was going to run forever, and the next 40 years, just be lawyers and just helping people in the general community. And that was a goal of sorts, but it wasn't a really well-defined goal. But actually sitting down and working out what is a goal that actually can change things. What's a goal that can actually change where you're going and change the world, right? Allows you to then set your smaller targets as you're going. So every year we redo our goal of where we're taking this business and the various different businesses that we're going, and we realign it based on what's happened in the last 12 months. We're recording this at the end of 2021, which is, the end of 2 years almost of pandemic. And so the goals changed massively over the last couple of years. So I would say absolutely. And I would say it would change at least every year, right? At least every year, because my measure of success will change because I'm changing my goals. And because I'm changing my goals to make them bigger, although you can't get much bigger than making legal life successful for everyone.
Small target, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. But you can, my measure of success changes based on what I think I can achieve. And so for me, I have KPIs, I have critical drivers that help me get to my KPIs, but they do change regularly, and they will continue to change because I think that I know for myself I need that. I can't just have some set in stone goal, which I'll reach one day, and then what am I going to do? I don't know, go and sit on the beach, and that'll last for about a week. So even with the lovely beaches that we have around Queensland.
Actually, you made me feel comfortable when you mentioned COVID. So we've both done it now. If we can't seem to escape this topic, but yeah, look, it's interesting that you do it on a yearly basis, and this will be the third time now. But I won't use the word, with the current situation that we're all facing. I think the idea of what does strategy and goal setting look like has to become more, you have to have more, and here's a academic term, but I think it's applicable here. The degree to which you have things like strategic ambidexterity in the business, and take that one step further, how much you're able to pivot in the business is critical. And so you said yearly, but I think from what I'm hearing, if you needed to do it every 6 months, every 3 months, you'd want to do it to reach your goal. Because if you, as goal focused as I think you are, but just by what you're describing, I mean, if you've got the aim and the ambition of changing this discussion around the law and access to it on a global scale, this is big. This is big picture stuff that you're doing. So, okay, and I guess the measure of success may change over time too, because and what if you franchise what you're doing out to other countries? And then, I'm just talking out loud here. I don't know exactly where you're going with it, but you could do it. You become like the McDonald's of helping people to engage with the law, and there's nothing wrong with that. No. Make it accessible to everybody. All right, Jeremy. So we've got to a point here where I can't pick it exactly at where you might go with the next topic area, but I'm fascinated to ask, because you do have a legal background, is leader capability. So you have been as a professional having to find the proper English phrases here. You have had to develop certain leader capabilities or capabilities in general in the legal profession, but you've also had to develop them for your entrepreneurial ventures and what you're doing outside of the legal sphere and the crossover that's there. Do you have a list, a Jeremy Streten list of the key leader capabilities, or is it something that is an ongoing conversation for you? Like, do you have some that you think are critical for you?
For me, there's three things that I see as like my leadership values. One, and these are things that I value, and so that I look for in people that I work with, and that's loyalty. So, people who are loyal and don't backstab and all the rest of that, which you see far too often. A growth mindset, so people who are willing to grow, people who listen to great podcasts like this one, who love to read
thanks.
books.
Thanks, mate. Yes, yes.
And also people who are present. Every time that you hear someone who's met a billionaire or a millionaire or whatever, one of the things that always sticks in my mind is that they always talk about the fact that that person was completely present in a conversation. So I network a lot in the States. I have a networking group that I'm in out of Nashville, and the guy that runs that is a very, very wealthy man, and he runs multiple different enterprises, and he's everywhere. But one of the things that always strikes me when I go to meet him, his name's Aaron Walker, or as he says, Aaron Walker, because his mother gave him 2 A's. Lovely guy, really, really, really great guy. He always says, or he's always very present in the conversation. We'll be in a room with like 150 people in that group, and he's completely focused on you. And you hear the same about all the great leaders, that when they're talking to you, when they're engaging with you, that they're present. And so for me, presence is such an important part of being a leader, and such an important value. So for me, it's those three: loyalty, growth, and presence. If you don't have that, then for me, it's something that we can work on, but they're the keys for me that I think people need to have.
That's great. The third one in that list of being present is new to the discussion. This is the point. This is what drives me to do the podcast and to have these discussions. Yeah, that's quite an important one, and I think you can tell when someone is not there, or maybe this is not the right. I think this is the right comparison, that we're so into our technology and on the phone that you could be with friends at a dinner table and you're all on the phone, and you may not all be quite there, and it's quite telling that when people pick up on it, or you call someone out on it, they get very defensive. Well, the phone is like an extension of me, and no, it's not. It's a tool to do things. It's not you. Yeah, okay. That I like that, and I think I'll tease that out a bit more in other discussions. But you've defined it quite nicely, and the fact that you look for that suggests that you might be looking for those three things in other leaders that you deal with. And so, if you met someone that might be quite a wealthy individual, or if they don't want to be present, but you've got the other two, it might maybe set you back. It might make you rethink relationships. Is that a fair call?
Yeah, yes, it is a fair call. And it's not something I'd probably do consciously, but it's something that I'm very mindful of. I even have a Post-it note on my screen with those three words on it, as a constant reminder to myself that those those are the things that I do value. And you don't always think of that in a conversation, but like I remember, and I won't say his name, but my old boss would be in a meeting.
Please don't get me into legal problems, given that you have a legal background, so that would be good. Yes.
No. But he would be in a meeting with a client, and he'd be spending half the time on his phone. I've got my phone in my hand. He'd be spending half the time texting people on his phone and responding to emails, and that just always struck me as very very poor form. And I'm sure if he thought about it, he'd probably agree with me too. And that's not being present. So yeah, it's around just that presence, and not being distracted is so important. And if you are distracted, call it out. And call out the fact that you are distracted. I've done that in the past too, when someone hasn't been present in a conversation. I'm like, you seem to be distracted. What's going on? And usually people don't even realize that they're doing it. They don't realize that that's a tough one to do. That takes a lot of courage to call someone out on that, because if I was having a meeting with you and I thought you were distracted with someone else, I'd go, look, can we do this another time when you can give me your full concentration? I'm not asking for all of it for 24 hours, just for the 10, 15 minutes that I might need you. So I can see where you're going with that. Okay. Jeremy, the nature versus nurture question, always ask this, and I'm very interested to see where you'll go with it. Are leaders born, or are they made? Well, they're all born, because everyone's born at some point.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's the first one on that one for me. All right, fair enough.
Sorry, that's just my poor sense of humor. But then I think they're born and they're made, I think is the answer. That you need to have a desire to be a leader, I don't think that you can throw someone into being a leader. So I don't think you can just get someone and go, you must be a leader. And I've seen that in the legal profession all the time. Someone who's a great technician, someone goes, oh, you'll be a great leader, and they're terrible at managing people because they have no desire to manage the people. So I think that, yeah, everyone's born, everyone could do it, but they've got to want to do it. And so, it's really around what are their values, what are their goals, where are they going with it, and and you can really make someone do it. But if they don't want to do it, don't try and make them do it, because that's just a recipe for disaster. And you see that in the professions all the time. All the time, you see people promoted to a senior associate or a special counsel or something, and they're going to have people under them, but they don't really want that. They just want to be the technician. So, the born leader is the person who wants that, has that desire, or develops that desire over time. And then the made is the part where we actually go in and we help them to make them become the leader that we want them to be.
That's interesting. You bring up the element of leadership as it being a choice, and yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think that no one forces leadership on anyone. I think the only time where you have to bring it to the fore is when you're parenting. Now, I'm not talking you're going to set agendas for your kids and they're going to behave to script, because that never bloody happens. But I think being a role model and having them believe that the standard they're prepared to walk by is the standard that they're prepared to accept, that stuff is something you hope your kids will learn. And as much as you believe, and this is from a parenting perspective, so make of this what you will, that it's not only you that's helping to build that in them, it's who they associate with, their friends, how they look on life, and all that stuff sort of comes together, and you hope that they make good choices. And where I was trying to go with that is, as a parent, that's a leader role that you can't escape, because you've got to be present, again, using that terminology, but also, put aside the growth mindset and loyalty with your kids, because you hope that they're bonded to you because they love you. But, definitely the being present for your kids is quite important. And I think it's the thinking on there is underdone. I think that if you can show those behaviors that are typically good in leaders, I think those behaviors are typically good in any human being. So if you're good with people, you demonstrate your values, and you're not prepared to walk all over human beings. Doesn't matter if you're a leader; these are good things to have for normal functioning human beings. So yeah. Look, Jeremy, the final topic area, and I don't think that this is as critical in the podcasting as I used to think it was, but I want to ask it, because what you've brought up here is, although you need to look to the future, looking back is also important if you want to get to a point where you're a better practitioner in the leadership game. Now, I don't think everyone would agree with that, but for you personally, if I asked you to look back, and the question is, what would you say to a Jeremy Streten, a younger version of yourself, of being about being a more effective leader?
It's around learning. I think one of the things that I didn't do well when I was a young lawyer was to learn and read and educate myself in other areas other than the law. We have certain requirements every year that we have to have so many CPD points, continuing professional development points.
Yeah, please, the acronym game. Yeah, okay. So ongoing professional development.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So you have to do that on legal things, so that you'll stay up to date with how the law is changing and what needs to happen. But for me, I think one of the big changes for me was around educating myself. I read or listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks for at least 3 hours a day. So I'm an early riser. I've got 2 small children. I get up at 4 a.m. before they get up, and I read for at least an hour, maybe 2 before they get up, depending on the day and when the sun's coming up. And I have a very clear goal of 3 hours a day to learn. I got that from. Have you ever heard of Zig Ziglar, Eric?
No.
He's now deceased. He was an American a sales coach, very, very popular over there on how to sell and mindset and leadership. And that was always something that struck me with what he said. He said, if you're not doing at least 3 hours a day of learning, then you're not learning enough. And when I first heard that, like, that's a lot of stuff. But I've got I make sure that I'm always learning. I'm always looking for new opportunities. I'm always looking for where the technology is going. Like we're in Australia, you and I, and we're generally a year or two behind the rest of the world in a lot of the latest trends. So it's about being on top of those so that I can be at the forefront of that going forward. So for me, the thing I would tell myself right back 20 years ago would be learn more about non-legal areas and learn more about personal development and business.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, look, the hindcasting question can be taken a couple of ways, and I haven't had a response like that before about the learning. Now, 3 hours a day. Yeah, okay, that's. I think I could work to that, but not straight away. But I get what you're saying. That, and I think the nub of that is if you have a lifelong learning approach to what you do, surely to God, it wouldn't just be in the one area that you're interested in, that you might have other interests. So, and your response kind of makes sense given where you've gone with your business now and what you do professionally, that you've branched out to do other things. So this is great. Look, Jeremy, thank you for your time. But before we end the podcast, give us a bit of a heads up on what you're doing and any information for those that are listening and or watching the podcast today.
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. So people, if they want to look for me on LinkedIn, I'm the only person that I've seen in the world so far that spells my last name the way that I do. So if you search for Jeremy Streten on LinkedIn, people will be able to find me there. Send me a connection request. Just say that you heard me on this podcast, and I'd love to connect with you. Also, so one of the signature products that we have at the Lifecycle is a test. It's an assessment that you can do on your business to figure out where are those legal risks and blind spots that you have in your business. We have a test online. It takes about 10 minutes. It asks about 30 questions, and it's about $97 Australian to take the test. As a thank you for having me on, if people go to businesslegallifecycle.com/talking leadership, just as one word, there'll be a page that we've set up directly for this podcast as a thank you for having us on, where that people can get a 50% discount on that. Just follow the instructions on the page to take that test and really find out what those legal blind spots are. And they can also go there. We've got lots of content on the website. We're constantly publishing new stuff. We're constantly providing new information that's relevant for business owners. So you can check that out and see what we do. If you sign up for our newsletter, we will not spam you either. It will be relevant information that will be good for you and for your business journey, or even if you're just interested to learn more about the legal side of things. There's heaps of stuff on there that we freely share because we want to help people to see stuff.
I appreciate you making the offer, and I'll make all of those links available in the podcast description, both on YouTube and on the podcast platforms that the audio version of this will go on. So, Jeremy, thanks for your time, man.
Thanks so much, Eric.
For those listening, this has been Talking Leadership. Thank you for joining me again, and we'll catch everyone on the next podcast.